Welcome back, class. Today we're going over in more detail our first type of card in Universes, the character card. Without character cards, we don't really have a game. And character cards are a unique type of card because you will choose one character to be what is called your starting character when you build your deck. And your deck will usually be built around this character. This character card starts outside of your deck and cannot be removed from the game or destroyed in any sort of way. So basically, this is who you're choosing to represent you in your matches. Every character has a health all their own, which differs depending on the hand size and the character abilities. And as I just said, each character has a different hand size, usually ranging between 5, 6, or 7. Now, we have had some in the past that have been a 4 hand size character with massive health pools, but we don't need to worry about that as we are not going to focus on characters from that time at this moment. Now, what makes this game even more unique is that at the beginning of your turn, instead of drawing just one card, like you normally would in, say, Magic the Gathering or Yu-Gi-Oh!, you will draw until you have a number of cards in your hand up to your character's hand size. So, let's say, for example, we are playing as Yusuke Team Leader here. We will draw every turn until we have 7 cards in our hand. Now, if you already have 7 cards in your hand as Yusuke Team Leader, when your draw phase comes around, you don't draw. But at the end of the turn, if you have more than 7 cards in your hand, you also don't have to discard. We don't have a maximum hand size limit in this game. So that is probably one of the best and coolest parts of this game, because how many games have you played from other games where you run out of resources and you draw that one card for the turn and it's not very helpful? In this game, you can have 0 cards in your hand when your turn comes around and draw up to your full printed hand size and be able to worm your way out of a tight spot. And it's really cool, and just the dynamics of the game can change from turn to turn based on what you draw. Sometimes you'll get really lucky and draw all of the cards you need. Sometimes you'll draw very unlucky and not be able to do much on a given turn. And usually, as the hand size goes up, you will see that the health of your character will normally go down. This is one of the balancing mechanics to make sure that you don't have characters with a whole bunch of hand and a whole bunch of health, because that just wouldn't be fair for anybody. Now, as I said, characters will stay outside of your deck. Your starting character will. You are allowed to put other character cards in your deck, and some character cards actually want you to play multiple copies of themselves. I have an example here in Kurama, Yoko Unleashed. This character actually wants you to play multiple copies of himself. So you can play multiple copies that would go in your deck, but you would not be able to access any of the abilities on them like you would your starting character. This is the character similar to a fighting game. When you choose your character and fight as that character, that's what you're doing in Universes. You are selecting your character, and then your deck is all of the abilities that you could use in that game to play as that character. Now, character cards, we'll just use Yusuke here for an example. As I said, we'll stay outside of the deck. So, you would basically have your setup similar to this, and I will be using another mat when we get into the actual gameplay of the turn, which can demonstrate this better. So, your character always stays separate from your deck, and when you go to do what's called a control check, which is how our game is played, you are allowed to commit, which is to turn your character sideways, to assist in passing your control checks. And I will go into that in more detail when we get into the actual how to play of the game. But also, when you are the person who is going first, you always start with your character committed or turned sideways, and cards that are committed, you cannot use the abilities on them unless they are abilities that are playable while committed, and it will say that directly on the card. So, that is the basics of character cards. And as I said, whenever you build your deck after selecting your character, you will select one of the 3 symbols right down here. On these newer cards, you'll choose one of these 3 symbols, and every card in your deck must share that symbol with your character. So for Yusuke, we have the all, good, and life symbols. For Izuku Midoriya here, we have the earth, good, and life symbols. And for Kuwabara, we have the earth, fire, and good symbols. I just realized that I chose 3 good symbol characters to show for my little example here. So, as I said, this is your main build-around for your deck. You're going to select your character and build your deck using cards from all sorts of IPs and animes, video games, all of that, to build a deck around your character. Sometimes in deck building, you'll have a specific strategy or gimmick, and you'll choose a character based on which character would play that strategy or gimmick best. But 9 times out of 10, when you're building a deck, you're selecting a character, usually your favorite, like me, and building around that character. So, with all that being said, I think that is enough for the basics of what character cards are and the role that they play in this game, and I will see you in the next lesson. Until then, class dismissed.